Witness the complete history of the 8 foreign wars since the founding of New China in one go. All 8 wars ended in undeniable defeats, with the last one ending in a complete annihilation of the enemy forces in just 48 minutes. The first conflict, the Korean War, began in 1950 when North Korea crossed the 38th parallel, pushing into South Korea's capital, Seoul. The United States intervened under the auspices of the United Nations, pushing North Korean forces back and posing a great threat to the China-North Korea border. China protested immediately and decided to assist North Korea to defend their homeland, with General Pang De-huai leading the Chinese Volunteer Army into battle. After 3 years of intense and arduous fighting, the Volunteer Army pushed the U.S. forces back to the 38th parallel and signed the Korean Armistice Agreement, shattering the myth of U.S. military invincibility. This war, as a founding battle for New China, truly embodied the principle of strike one to avoid 100. The second conflict was the 1962 China-India border self-defense counterattack. After gaining independence from Britain, Indian Prime Minister Nehru aimed to establish India as a world power, continuously provoking China. Initially, China, adhering to its principle of peaceful coexistence, showed great restraint. However, India's unrelenting provocations and territorial incursions led to a large-scale border conflict. China decisively launched a self-defense counterattack, lasting 5 months and completely repelling Indian forces, maintaining its territorial integrity and sovereignty. The third conflict involved Chinese support against American aggression in Laos during the 1950s and 1960s. Facing U.S. aggression, Laos sought China's aid. China provided substantial military and material support, including weapons, training of troops and technical personnel, and the construction of roads by over 110,000 Chinese engineers. The Chinese People's Liberation Army also contributed to the anti-aircraft warfare, significantly aiding Laos's victory. The fourth conflict was post-World War II assistance to Vietnam against French colonial rule and subsequent American efforts to prevent Vietnamese unification. China sent troops to help Vietnam and protected key transportation routes, ultimately leading to a U.S. ceasefire. The fifth conflict was the 1969 Sino-Soviet border clash over Jinbao Island, escalating tensions and leading to several skirmishes. Despite facing Soviet tanks and armored vehicles, Chinese border troops successfully defended the island, enhancing China's international standing. The sixth conflict was the 1974 Battle of the Spratly Islands, historically part of China's territory. After the U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam, South Vietnam, emboldened by leftover American weaponry, aggressively occupied the islands. China swiftly retaliated, driving South Vietnamese forces out and securing a decisive victory. The seventh conflict was the 1979 Sino-Vietnamese War. Following Vietnam's alliance with the Soviet Union and continuous provocations along the China-Vietnam border, the Chinese People's Liberation Army launched a counterattack, capturing over 20 Vietnamese cities and then withdrawing after achieving their objectives. The eighth conflict was the 1987 battle in the Spratly Islands, with China establishing an oceanic observation station in Vietnam attempting to disrupt and occupy the Spratly Reefs. The Chinese Navy quickly responded, defeating the Vietnamese forces in less than an hour and reinforcing China's maritime sovereignty.